"Put your hands on your head." The officer screamed, his gun aimed at my chest. Finger twitching. I was still in my Marine uniform, duffel at my feet, medals on my heart. But none of that mattered. Not here, not to him. Not when all he saw was a black man at gate 12, and in that moment surrounded by gasps, silence, and cell phones, I realized something no war zone ever taught me. Coming home was more dangerous than combat. They yelled at me like I was a criminal. "Hands on your head, now." The command ripped through the terminal, sharper than the winter wind outside. I froze. People gasped. Children cried. A mother instinctively pulled her child behind her. Phones came out. Recording. I stood still, heart thumping in my chest like a war drum. Not because I was guilty, but because I was not. And in that moment, that did not matter. I was wearing my full Marine Corps uniform, pressed, decorated, clean. My boots, polished to a mirror shine. My duffel bag hung heavy on my shoulder, containing nothing but sand-stained shirts, the ashes of my best friend, and a letter I had not dared read yet. I had just returned from Kabul, less than 24 hours ago. I was in a helicopter dodging mortar shells. Now, I was being treated like a terrorist in the middle of Atlanta International Airport. Two officers approached fast. One had his hand on his holster. The other already had his gun out, pointed directly at my chest. I did not move. Didn't speak. Not because I was scared, because I knew. When you are a black man in America, silence is sometimes your only shield. Behind them, a man in a blazer badge, clipped proudly on his hip, barked into a radio. His hair was slicked back, his eyes hard, unblinking. Authority oozed from him like oil. He did not see me. Not really. He saw the color of my skin, not the cloth of my uniform. He saw a threat. Drop the bag. The armed cop screamed. I did. It landed with a thud that echoed through the terminal, like a coffin being lowered into a grave. Step back. Hands where I can see them. I raised them slowly, keeping my gaze low. My medals shimmered under the terminal's fluorescent lights. People began whispering. I could hear them. Isn't he a soldier? Why would a soldier? Maybe it is fake. Maybe he is not who he says he is. No one stepped forward. No one spoke for me. I was surrounded by eyes, phones, judgment, but not one hand extended to help. I am Sergeant Marcus Hall, 32 years old, born in Detroit, son of a preacher and a high school cafeteria worker. First in my family to serve. First in my company to make it out of that ambush in Kandahar. I have bled for this country, watched brothers die for it. I came home with a purple heart and a limp that haunts my right leg every morning. But none of that mattered now. They made me kneel. Right there, in front of gate 12, the same gate where families reunited, where children waved flags, where homecomings were supposed to be sacred. I was forced down, boots scraping cold tile, as strangers looked on, some laughing, some horrified, most indifferent. The officer with the gun reached down and yanked my cover. My name tag flashed in the light. Hall. He sneered. You expect us to believe you are military. I did not answer. I could not. My throat was dry, my pride crushed, my soul hollow. They ripped open my bag. My friend's urn rolled out, denting on the floor. What the hell is this? I turned then, my first movement since the chaos began. That is Corporal Jamal Taylor, I said. Voice breaking. He did not make it home. I promised his mother I would bring him back. The officer blinked. For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt. Shame. But it vanished just as fast. He turned back to the man in the blazer. This guy's clean. He muttered. Blazer man did not care. Get his ed. Run it again. Full background check. I sat on my knees. Fists clenched. Not because I was afraid, but because if I let go, I would scream. And if I screamed, I would get shot. That was America for me, a war hero at war, with his own home. A woman nearby, late 40s, silver-streaked hair, pale skin, had her phone out. She was recording. Her eyes were wet. Stop. She whispered. Not loud enough to matter. He is wearing the flag. No one listened. My id came back. Clean. Honorable discharge. Service medals. No priors. Nothing suspicious. Still, they made me wait. Still, they questioned. Still, they doubted. You can stand up now. One of them finally muttered. I did. Slowly. My knees shook, not from weakness. From rage. They handed me my cover back. Crushed. They shoved my bag toward me. Ashes spilled slightly from the cracked urn. No apology. No explanation. No dignity. I gathered my things in silence. The passengers watched, some embarrassed, some avoiding eye contact. Only one person walked toward me. The woman with the silver hair. She knelt, right in front of me, helping me zip up my bag, helping me pick up pieces of a man the world had already forgotten. I am sorry, she said. My husband, he served too. He died in Fallujah. If he saw this, he would. She could not finish. I did not let her. It is okay. Madame, I said softly. You are the first person to look me in the eye all day. That is when the radio on the officer's shoulder crackled. Dispatch to Officer Kyle Sanders. You have just detained Sergeant Marcus Hall, Medal of Honor recipient. Repeat, Medal of Honor recipient. Uncuff him immediately. The Pentagon's on the line. Everything froze. His face turned pale. The man in the blazer's mouth fell open. Whispers erupted. Medal of Honor. You are kidding me. He's the one from that rescue mission. Didn't he save an entire unit? I did not speak. Didn't he need to? Because for the first time all day, they saw me not as a black man, not as a threat, but as someone they should have saluted hours ago. I turned, limping toward the exit. I did not need the flight anymore. I had already arrived back to the same country I left behind. Broken. And unchanged, I was born into noise, Detroit noise. Police sirens at midnight, buses groaning down broken streets. Kids playing double dutch on cracked sidewalks while old men argued about the lions over 40-cent coffee. My mother, Ruth Hall, worked double shifts in the high school cafeteria. My father, Reverend Elijah Hall, preached sermons so fierce you would think the angels themselves leaned in to listen. And me, I was the quiet one. I listened, watched, learned early that in my neighborhood, surviving was not a given, it was a choice you made every single day. But I wanted more than survival. I wanted to matter, not for ego, not for glory, just to matter. The first time I ever saw a Marine was at my cousin Darnell's funeral. He had died in Afghanistan. I remember the men in blue dress uniforms folding that flag so tight it looked like it could slice stone. My aunt collapsed when they handed it to her. I was 15. I had never seen dignity and heartbreak exist in the same second until that moment, when I told my parents I was enlisting after high school. Mama cried. Daddy did not say a word, he just reached for his Bible and opened it to Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teacheth my hands to war, and my fingers to fight. That was all the blessing I needed. Boot camp broke me down, then built me back up. My drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Freeman, was a giant of a man with a voice that could shatter granite. But he saw something in me. Discipline, calm, a leadership I had not even realized I had. I earned stripes, led fire teams, became the guy others looked to when everything went wrong. I saw things overseas that I will carry until my last breath. I watched children dig water out of mud. I watched a father cradle his daughter's body after a drone strike missed its target by 20 meters. I have held the hands of men younger than me as they bled out whispering, "Tell my mom I love her." I have buried friends with my bare hands because the soil was too hot for tools. But through it all, I never lost faith in my country, in my brothers, in the idea that maybe, just maybe, I was doing something good. Then came the mission that would forever tie my name to headlines I never asked for. It was a midnight operation in Helmand Province. We would received intel about an ambush setup. What we did not know was that it was a trap. 5 of my men were pinned down under heavy fire. The radio was jammed. The Humvee had exploded. Smoke, blood, screams, chaos. I did not think. I ran. I dragged 2 men back under fire. I shot until my last clip emptied. Then, with a bullet in my thigh and shrapnel near my lung, I threw smoke grenades and carried another Marine across 2 football fields of hell. I do not remember passing out. I remember waking up in Germany. The doctor told me I would never run again. But they also told me I would receive the Medal of Honor. You would think that would mean something. That when I returned home, people would treat me like more than just another black face in a uniform. That the colors of blood would count for something. But no medal can outshine skin in the eyes of men like Officer Kyle Sanders. And so, when they made me kneel at gate 12 with a gun pointed at my chest, I did not scream my title. I did not shout about my medals or my sacrifice. I did not need to, because I had already given this country the best years of my life. I had nothing left to prove. The day I was supposed to return home for good, I carried ashes. Jamal Taylor was my best friend. Born in New Orleans, grew up loving poetry and jazz. We shared bunk beds in boot camp, laughed over mirrors, survived ambushes together. He died during a routine patrol out under the road. His body was shipped back, but his mom asked me to carry his urn personally. He always said, she told me, voice trembling, that if anything happened, he would want Marcus to bring him home. This is what I was doing when those cops tackled me. I was bringing my brother home. They did not ask. Didn't he care? Didn't he look? Just acted. And still, when the police chief's voice came through that radio, and the words Medal of Honor recipient made them freeze, all I could think about was Jamal. He deserved better. We all do. You see, I did not just serve this country overseas. I served it in silence in how I bit my tongue every time someone at the grocery store followed me down the aisle, in how I smiled politely when folks at gas stations called me sir like it surprised them, in how I let the world forget that black soldiers bled just the same in every war this country has ever fought. When I walked through that airport, my uniform did not protect me, but my silence did. Because the moment I had spoken had shouted, I would not be here telling you this. They would have cuffed me harder. Maybe worse. And the world would have read my name on another headline that started with man shot in altercation. But I am not a headline. I am Marcus Hall. I serve this country. And now, I am ready to serve justice. Not for myself, but for every brother who never got the chance to come home in uniform. Officer Kyle Sanders believed in order. He believed in us and them, in lines that should not be crossed, in uniforms that demanded respect his, not others. At 46 years old, he had spent over 2 decades in law enforcement. Patrolling terminals, breaking up brawls, flagging suspicious behavior. He knew the airport like the back of his hand. Every corner, every gate, every shadow. But what he did not know, what he refused to know, was how deep his own prejudice ran. To Kyle, a man's skin spoke louder than his silence. Louder than medals, than service, than scars earned in foreign lands. It was not the first time he had pulled his weapon on someone who looked like me, but this time would be the last. He stood 6 feet tall, square-jawed, clean-cut with military-style hair and a voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. He walked with a posture that demanded obedience and eyes that narrowed whenever someone brown walked too fast or stood too still. He was not just a cop, he was a gatekeeper to a world he thought only certain people deserved to belong in. His partner, Officer Daniels, younger and visibly nervous that day, had hesitated when I dropped my bag. Kyle had not. His gun was already out, already aimed, already treating me like a target long before he knew my name. He is military. He had scoffed when my id was handed over. Anybody can buy a uniform online. No doubt in his voice. Just disdain. Because to him, black and brave did not go together. Hero and hoodie sounded like fiction. And when he opened my bag and saw the urn, his instinct was not reverence, it was suspicion. Could be drugs. He muttered, "Sir, that is a fallen Marine," I had said. Jaw clenched, barely able to breathe through the humiliation. He did not blink. Because Kyle was not built to see humanity in the people, he had spent years labeling threats. I later learned about his file. Dozens of complaints, allegations of racial profiling swept under bureaucratic rugs. body cams that mysteriously malfunctioned, a black teen mistaken for a loiterer and cuffed outside his own prom. A Latina grandmother questioned for wandering when she could not read English signs. But Kyle always came out clean, protected by a system that valued silence over justice. His badge was a shield, not just from danger, but from consequences. That day, at Gate 12, he did not just humiliate me. He violated every principle his badge was supposed to represent. When the police chief's call came through, when the words Medal of Honor recipient pierced the radio static, Kyle flinched not out of respect, but fear. For a moment, you could see it. The crack in the armor, the sudden dread that maybe, this time, he would gone too far. He looked at me. Really looked, for the first time. And all he saw was the reflection of a man who had done more for this country than he ever would. But it was not guilt that washed over his face. It was anger. The kind of anger born not from shame, but from being exposed. He unhanded me roughly. Didn't apologize. Didn't offer an explanation. Just walked away as the crowd began to murmur, as cameras clicked, as a woman nearby whispered to her husband, "That is the guy from the cover of Time." Still, Kyle tried to reclaim control. He stormed back toward his supervisor. Demanded confirmation. Demanded backup. "Are we really doing this?" He hissed. He could be lying. The chief arrived minutes later. The airport's entire tone shifted. Suddenly, I was surrounded by agents in suits, by photographers, by airport staff lining up to shake my hand like I had just come off a parade float. But I did not smile. I watched Kyle. He stood off to the side, arms folded, lips thin, eyes burning. He did not speak again that day, not to me, not to the chief, not to the press, because there was nothing he could say that would wipe away what he would done. I was not his first victim, but I would be his last. Because the moment that footage hit the internet, the moment people saw a war hero brought to his knees in front of a Chick-fil-A by a man who could not see past skin, the world decided they would had enough. Petitions started. Hashtags spread. Veterans across the country spoke out. So did parents. So did senators. The tide was coming. And Kyle still thought he could stand against it. He still believed his badge could buy him silence. But he forgot one thing. He was not the only one trained for battle. You never forget the first time your dignity gets ripped away like a badge torn from your chest. It was supposed to be a routine layover. I had flown from Kabul to Ramstein to Jafk to Atlanta, the final stop, before heading home to Montgomery. I was 2 hours from hugging my son for the first time in over a year. He had learned to ride a bike without me, grown 3 inches, asked Santa to bring Daddy back safe. That reunion was all I had clung to during sleepless nights in the desert, during patrols with minds beneath the soil and fear overhead. But instead of riding that escalator into a terminal filled with balloons and welcome signs, I found myself barefoot, beltless, and humiliated. After the confrontation at Gate 12, after Officer Kyle Sanders had shoved me to the ground and disrespected the uniform I nearly died in, it did not end. No, he wanted more. Take off the jacket. He barked, and the shirt We need to check for gang tattoos. Gang tattoos? The man had looked directly at my Marine Corps insignia, my combat ribbons. My Purple Heart clapped to my chest, and still. The only thing he saw when he looked at me was gang member. I glanced at the other officer, Daniels. Younger. Clearly uncomfortable. His eyes darted to the crowd forming just beyond the security line. "Sir, I do not think this is protocol." He mumbled, "Are you the lead here?" Kyle growled. Daniels shrunk, and I began to remove my uniform piece by piece. The blazer went first, then my shirt. My dog tags clinked softly against my chest. The cool air of the terminal prickled against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the heat of shame flooding my body. Phones were up, dozens of them, some recorded in silence. Others whispered, "This can't be real." And yet, it was. I was standing there, stripped down, next to a trash bin outside a Starbucks, while children asked their parents why the army man looked so sad. One woman clutched her purse as she walked by. A man in a suit laughed under his breath. I had faced insurgents in alleyways, traded gunfire with men who saw me as the enemy, but never, not once, had I felt as unsafe as I did in that airport, surrounded by people who called themselves my countrymen. Kyle barked another order. "Pants too." I froze. "Excuse me," I said, voice finally breaking. "We need to be thorough. Unless you have got something to hide." At that moment, I looked up, not at Kyle, not at Daniels, but at the crowd. A woman, the same one with silver hair, who earlier tried to intervene, was crying now. Her voice trembled as she shouted, "He is a Marine." "What are you doing?" Others chimed in. "Let him go. This is disgusting. He has got medals." But Kyle was not fazed. He grabbed my arm. That is when I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I said, voice low but sharp, the kind of tone I used to quiet Marines under fire. For a second, he looked stunned. But before the situation could escalate further, a voice cut through the noise. Deep, stern, commanding. "Officer Sanders, step back, now." Everyone turned. The airport's police chief had arrived. Black suit, gold badge, eyes filled with disbelief. Behind him were two men in military dress. Real soldiers. Army Rangers, by the patches on their sleeves. The chief walked up to me, took one look at my name tag, and saluted. "Sergeant Hall." "I apologize. This ends now." He turned to Kyle. "You are suspended. Effective immediately." Kyle's face drained of color. "You can be serious." I said, "Effective immediately." Someone in the crowd began to clap. Then another. And another. Not for me, but because someone finally had courage to say, "This is wrong." I was given a blanket, my uniform handed back gently. An officer who had served in Iraq helped me fasten my shirt. His hands shook. "I am sorry." "Brother," he whispered, "you do not deserve this." I nodded, unable to speak. Then I noticed something. The ashes. Jamal's urn, still cracked, still unsealed, had tipped over during the chaos. A small streak of gray now lined the corner near the trash bin. I dropped to my knees, silently scooping it back with trembling fingers. The world may have stripped me, but I would not let them desecrate my brother's remains. Not him. Not again. And as I stood up, hands gray, heart heavy, I heard someone behind me murmur. They tried to humiliate a hero, but the real shame was not mine. It was theirs. The world did not change because I resisted. It changed because someone watched me resist. Her name was Linda Faye Prescott, 56 years old, retired elementary school teacher. White. Widowed. Her husband had served 2 tours in Iraq, died in a roadside bombing that left half his platoon in pieces. She never remarried, said no man would ever match the one who came home in a box wrapped in a flag. That morning, Linda had only come to the airport to pick up her daughter. Just another day. Another flight. Another ordinary errand. But she saw me. She saw the uniform. The way I stood straighter than most men twice my age. She saw the duffel bag, the Marine Corps tags. The way I did not argue when they started barking orders. She saw my silence and knew it was not guilt. It was grief. Linda had been walking toward the cafe when she heard the shout. Hands on your head. She turned and saw the gun first, then the man behind it. Then me, a black soldier frozen, proud, still, and her gut told her something was not right. She did not know me. Didn't he know my story? But she knew shame when she saw it. So she reached into her purse, pulled out her iPhone, and hit record. She did not stop when I dropped my bag. Didn't stop when the urn rolled out and cracked. Didn't stop when I was ordered to strip. She recorded everything. When I finally caught her eye, after being made to kneel in the terminal, like a criminal, she gave me the smallest nod. It was not pity. It was not charity. It was solidarity. After the police chief arrived and ordered Sanders' suspension, after the clapping and the stunned silence, Linda stepped forward, not to shake my hand, but to hand me something. Her phone. It is all here, she said softly, start to finish. If you want it, it is yours. I took the phone. Our hands touched briefly. Hers were cold. Mine were shaking. Why? I asked. She looked at me, those gray-blue eyes steady as a mountain. Because I saw my husband in you. And if someone had done that to him, I would hope someone else would be recorded it too. I stood there, throat tight. The phone felt heavier than my medals, more powerful than the gun that had been pointed at me. It was not just evidence, it was truth. Undeniable. Unindicted. Later that night, in the silence of a hotel room the police chief had arranged for me, I watched the footage. From the moment I was surrounded to the second the urn hit the floor. From the officers' faces to the tears in the crowd. From the whispering passengers to the young girl asking, "Why are they being mean to the soldier?" "Mommy," I watched myself strong, still, humiliated, and I cried, not out of weakness, but because I knew this would never be just about me again. This was about every black man who'd been judged before he spoke, every veteran whose uniform did not shield them from bias, every family who lost a son, a daughter, a spouse, and came home to a country too blind to honor them. I posted the video at midnight. No commentary, no anger, just the caption. I served. This is how I was welcomed home. By sunrise, it had over 3 million views. By noon, 20 million. Hash. Justice for Stull. Hash salute not strip. Hash This Is America. Hashtags. Interviews. Reporters at my door. Veterans, groups, activists, even politicians. But none of it mattered more than the voicemail I got at 3:18 p. Sergeant Hall, the voice said, "This is Senator Avery. I have seen the footage. I am ashamed of what happened to you, and I would like to invite you to speak in front of Congress." I stared at the phone, then at the urn beside me. "Jamal," I whispered, "they are finally listening. Not because I shouted, but because Linda hit record. It came just as I was lacing my boots. The hotel room was quiet, the kind of quiet that creeps into your bones after a storm. The type that does not soothe, but stings. I had not slept. Not really. The night had been spent responding to emails from veterans groups, watching the views on Linda's video skyrocket, and ignoring the dozens of news vans parked outside the lobby. I felt exposed, not just publicly, but spiritually, like someone had ripped the armor from my soul and left me naked in front of the world. Then the phone rang. Not my cell. The landline in the hotel room. I hesitated. Only people with clearance had this number. When I picked it up, the voice on the other end was not angry. It was composed. Measured. Steel under silk. "This is General Mitchell Adams, Wes, Department of Defense." I stood instinctively. Every soldier knows that voice. A 4-star general who had not just climbed the ladder, he would build parts of it himself, decorated in 2 wars, respected in all branches. The kind of man who did not make calls lightly. "Sergeant Marcus Hall?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I saw the video." There was a pause, a long one. "I served with your father. Vietnam, 1969. He saved my life." I blinked. My knees went weak, but I did not sit. "My father, Elijah Hall. He carried me out under fire. Got shot twice doing it. Never asked for thanks. Never mentioned it again. I only recognized your name because of that last name and your face. You have got his jaw." I swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir." "I am not calling to thank you," he said. "I am calling because what happened at Atlanta International was a disgrace not just to you, but to the entire uniform. I have spoken with the Joint Chiefs. I have spoken with the White House. We are not letting this slide." I stayed silent. "I am sending a car. You will be flown to Dock C. Today, a military jet. Not commercial, sir. And when you arrive," he continued, "you will be escorted to a joint press conference. You will speak if you choose, or not, but we will be beside you. And that Officer Sanders, he is already being reviewed for federal civil rights violations. We are also investigating every complaint he has ever received. My throat tightened. I did not ask for any of this. I finally said, I just wanted to bury my friend. I know, the general said quietly. But sometimes, Sergeant, a man does not pick the moment. The moment picks him. I lowered the receiver slowly. Everything felt unreal. Minutes later, I was in the back of a black SUV, being driven across the tarmac to a military transport jet. An honor guard saluted me as I boarded the first proper salute I had received since stepping foot back in this country. Inside, 2 other Marines waited. One handed me a folded flag for Corporal Jamal Taylor. He said, I stared at it. How did you know? We always know, he said softly. The jet roared to life, and for the first time in days, I felt like I was not alone. The flight was short, the landing smoother than expected, and when I stepped out at Andrews Air Force Base, I was greeted not by reporters but by silence. 2 black SUVs, a team of aides, 1 man in a suit who extended his hand. Marcus Hall, he asked. Yes. Welcome home. I sat in a secure room hours later as the footage played again, this time on a 4K monitor in front of a dozen men and women in suits. Senators, military brass, policy advisors, civil rights leaders. When the footage ended, no one spoke for a full minute. Then, a senator from Massachusetts broke the silence. This country owes you a debt, she said, but more importantly, it owes truth to every man and woman who has ever worn that uniform and been looked at like less. That night, General Adams called again. I spoke to the president. He said, you are going to receive a second commendation, not for what you did overseas, but for what you stood for at home, and for what you endured with dignity. I looked down at my hands, still calloused, still shaking. Sir, I whispered, my friend's ashes are still in a cracked urn. He deserved better. I know, he said. He is being interred at Arlington next week, with full honors. You will lead the procession. Tears blurred my vision, not because I was sad, but because finally someone heard me. Someone saw me. The next morning, I stood on the steps of the Capitol, microphones in my face, flashes from cameras popping like gunfire. I cleared my throat and said only this. I did not come here for justice. I came home to bury a friend. What happened to me was wrong, but what happens every day to black veterans, to men and women who serve and are still questioned, feared, humiliated, that is the true stain. I hope this moment means something, because we wore the uniform for all Americans. It is time America wore its promises for us. The crowd erupted in applause, but I was not finished. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small object, and held it up. Jamal's dog tags. I carry him with me, and every soldier this country forgot. They waited until the cameras were gone, until the speeches ended, until the sun had dipped low enough to cast long shadows across the Capitol steps. That is when he approached me. Kyle Sanders. No badge, no gun, just a cheap gray polo shirt, cargo pants, and a face stripped of power. He walked like a man carrying weight he did not understand, stiff-backed but hollow. His eyes, once filled with authority and arrogance, now flickered with something else. Fear, maybe. Shame. Perhaps. Regret. I was not sure. I was not ready to care. I stood alone under a magnolia tree near the security checkpoint, watching people pack up folding chairs and cables. The wind carried the scent of pavement and sweat, the echoes of my own words still ringing in my chest. He cleared his throat. "Sergeant Hall," he said, voice quieter than I would ever imagined it could be. I did not look at him. He shifted. I wanted to speak to you, man to man. I turned slowly, keeping my gaze steady. He looked smaller now. Not physically. Spiritually. Like the illusion of who he thought he was had finally cracked under the weight who he would been. I did not know. He said, I did not see. I saw a threat, not a Marine, and I was wrong. I waited. He took a step closer. Hands trembling. His lip twitched like he wanted to say more, but could not find the words. I am sorry, sir. The last word hit the air like a dropped coin in a church. Sir. A title he had once denied me. A title he had now come to offer, not from policy, not from protocol, but from something deeper. Recognition. I did not move. Didn't he blink? Didn't he shake his hand? Because some apologies arrive like rain in a desert too late to save what is already burned. You did not see a Marine, I finally said, because you did not want to. That uniform was not invisible. My medals were not invisible. My humanity was not invisible. You made it invisible. He nodded, slowly, eyes shining now. I have been placed on administrative leave. There is an internal review. Could lose my pension. Everything. That is not my concern, I said. He looked down. I wanted to say sorry in person. No cameras. No headlines. Just. He paused. Just a man trying to make it right. I sighed. You do not get to make it right. But you do get to be better. That is all. His breath hitched. Can I ask you something? I raised an eyebrow. What made you not fight back that day? You could be yelled. You could be resisted. You could be. I cut him off, because if I had, you would be calling my mother to identify my body. He froze. That truth hit harder than anything I could be punched. You see, I continued, the difference between you and me is not just skin color. It is consequence. I make the wrong move, I am dead. You make the wrong move, you file a report. He swallowed hard. I will think about that every day. He whispered. You should. He turned to go. Shoulders sagged beneath the invisible weight of accountability. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel angry. I felt tired, but I also felt something else. Peace. Not for him. For me. Because I had not needed his apology, but he had needed to give it, and I had needed to stand there, whole, alive, respected and not accepted. Later that night, I walked into the quiet of my apartment. The urn sat on my mantel now, polished and repaired. Jamal's photo beside it. He smiled in that picture like he always did, wide, goofy, full of life. I placed a single Marine coin beside the frame. Then I stood at attention and saluted. "Rest easy." "Brother," I whispered. They finally saw us. The camera lights did not bother me anymore. Not after what I would already lived through. I sat there on the leather chair, a lavalier mic clipped to my collar, the Ken logo glowing quietly in the corner of the studio. Across from me sat the anchor, a poised woman in a red blazer with sympathetic eyes and a stack of bullet-pointed cards in her lap. But I did not need her questions. I already knew what I had to say. They called it a media tour. 3 days. 6 interviews. Every outlet from cable news to late night. One host even asked if I would be willing to write a book. The soldier they tried to strip. That was the headline the New York Times had gone with. A poet in the Washington Post called me a man whose silence spoke louder than a nation's fear. But beneath the applause, beneath the tweets and hashtags and think pieces, I felt something gnawing at me. Guilt. Not because of anything I did, but because I was being heard, and so many others never would be. Because I had a camera. Because I had Linda's footage. Because my humiliation had gone viral. But what about the ones who were humiliated in silence? Who were handcuffed and never got uncuffed? Who screamed and no senator ever called? In one interview, a reporter leaned and asked gently, "What hurt most?" "Sergeant." I paused. "The quiet." I answered. She blinked. The moment it happened, people saw, but no one said a word, not until it was too loud to ignore, not until someone else hit record. The interview went viral. Again, but that night, alone in the hotel suite, I watched something else. A video from a father in Ohio, another black veteran, who had served in Desert Storm. He had been detained outside a Walmart, accused of stealing a phone that turned out to be his own. No medals for him. No cameras. No apologies. Then another video. A woman who served in the Air Force was removed from a taxi because the driver said she looked intimidating. Her daughter had filmed it. Tears ran down her face as she explained what a combat flight helmet was. Each story cracked something inside me. I was not special. I was seen. And I knew I had to use that site to do more than just reclaim my dignity. I had to open a door. So I started a foundation, Home with Honor. Its mission: to provide legal aid and mental health support to veterans of color who face discrimination at home after serving abroad. We launched with 20 volunteers, lawyers, counselors, and fellow veterans. In the first month, we received over 800 inquiries. One came from a Gold Star mother whose son had been denied burial in a veterans cemetery because of a clerical error. Another came from a retired Navy nurse who was routinely pulled aside at SA because her Middle Eastern last name flagged something. A father in Texas, a daughter in Vermont, a mother in Chicago, one after another. I read every letter, every file, and each one reminded me the real fight was not overseas. It was here. One morning, after another long day of speaking at a town hall, I returned to my hotel to find a handwritten envelope slid under the door. Inside was a photo. A young boy, maybe 8 or 9, saluting the American flag in his front yard. The back of the photo read, "Dear Set, Hall, my name is Elijah. I want to be a Marine like you, because heroes do not need capes. They just need to be kind and brave. I sank into the bed and cried. Not the kind of crying that comes from pain, but the kind that comes from responsibility, because I knew that boy would grow up watching every move I made, and I would not let him see a man who let silence win. The next day, I stood in front of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, flanked by leaders of Congress, community elders, and other veterans. We unveiled a bipartisan bill, the Veteran Dignity Protection Act legislation, that would make it a federal offense for law enforcement or government agencies to discriminate against returning service members based on race, religion, or national origin. The cameras flashed, but I did not smile for them. I smiled for Elijah, for Jamal, for every silent salute in every overlooked corner of this country. When the bill passed committee 2 weeks later, my name was not in the title, but that was fine, because this was not about me. It never was. They told me to prepare a 5-minute statement, 5 minutes to summarize humiliation, 5 minutes to distill a life of silence, a career of service, and 1 moment of disgrace into something polite enough for Capitol Hill. I wrote 15 pages. I tore them up, because I knew if I walked into that chamber reading a speech, I would leave just another headline. But if I walked in and told the truth not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a man, they would have no choice but to listen. The hearing room was packed, rows of faces, senators, advisors, reporters, aides. They adjusted their microphones, shuffled their papers, offered tight nods, and practiced neutrality. But I was not there to play nice. I was sworn in, then sat down, and I began. My name is Marcus Elijah Hall. I served this country for 12 years in the United States Marine Corps. I led combat missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. I have received the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and the Medal of Honor. But none of that protected me from being forced to strip in front of families and children at an American airport. None of that stopped a police officer from treating me like a criminal just because of the color of my skin. You could hear the silence ripple. Let me tell you something about combat. When you are out there in the dirt, bullets do not care what race you are. Bombs do not ask about your background. And your brothers beside you, they do not see black, white, Latino, Asian. They see Marine. They see soldier. They see someone who would die for them. A few heads nodded. But back here in the country, I bled for the moment I stepped off that plane. I was not a hero. I was a threat. A black man with a uniform and a duffel bag. That is all they saw. I let that sink in. Officer Kyle Sanders did not know my name. He did not know my record. But he knew enough, did not he? He knew my skin. And that was enough for him to pull his gun, order me to strip, and make me kneel like I was back on foreign soil, only this time. The enemy wore an American flag on his shoulder. The chairwoman's eyes welled up. I saw a senator from Texas adjust his tie. Flustered, I leaned forward. I am not asking for pity. I am asking for protection. I want this Congress to understand that patriotism does not come with skin tones. That service deserves respect, regardless of complexion. And that if this can happen to me with medals, with cameras, with witnesses, imagine what is happening to veterans who return to no fanfare, no spotlight, No Linda Faye Prescott to record their shame. I paused. Then, quietly, imagine being stripped of your dignity by the very people you fought to defend. The room remained still. No one shuffled. No one coughed. Just silence, the heavy kind. I concluded, I will not raise my son in a country where his skin is seen before his service, where the uniform is sacred until a black man wears it. I came home expecting to bury my brother in arms. I did not expect to bury my honor. You want to thank me for my service? Don T. Clap? Don T. Tweet? Do something, pass the bill, make it law, make sure the next generation of veterans are welcomed home, not humiliated. As I stepped back, the crowd erupted not in standing ovation, but in understanding. It was in their eyes. The shift. The reckoning. The reckoning had begun. The Veteran Dignity Protection Act passed the Senate floor with bipartisan support a month later. I did not celebrate. I visited Jamal's mother. We sat on her porch in silence. I saw you. She whispered, tears in her eyes. He would have been proud. I handed her a folded flag, not the one from the government, but the one I carried in my pocket every day since he died. The one that had seen fire and smoke, shame, and finally redemption. He was proud. I said. The first thing I saw was his sign. It was crooked, hand-drawn in red crayon, the edges of the poster board frayed from a child's fear script. But the words stopped me in my tracks like a bullet to the heart. Welcome home, Daddy. You are my hero. My son, Elijah Marcus Hall, stood in the center of the elementary school gym, his tiny arms raised high, his eyes wide and searching, scanning the crowd for the man who had lived only in stories. Video calls and folded flags for the past 18 months. I could not move. I would stood before enemy fire, walked through smoke and sand and blood, testified before Congress, watched grown men tremble under the weight of justice. But this moment, I was undone. The school had invited me to speak a Veterans Day assembly. They said, kids in paper hats, an off-key rendition of God Bless America, and lukewarm coffee in the back. I almost declined, but then I saw Elijah's name on the program. He was scheduled to recite a poem about me. I waited behind the bleachers as they introduced me. Sergeant Marcus Hall, Medal of Honor recipient, advocate for veterans' rights. Father, that last word hit harder than any medal ever could as I stepped onto the polished gym floor. Applause erupted. Teachers stood. Children clapped. Some parents cried not because they knew me, but because they recognized me. My story had been theirs, too, in some small, hidden way, but I only saw one face. Elijah dropped the sign, ran. I dropped to one knee. He slammed into my arms, nearly knocking me over. His little hands clung to my neck like he was afraid I would disappear again. He did not say anything at first, just buried his face into my shoulder, shaking with the kind of cry that comes from missing someone so much your bones remember. I missed you every day, he finally whispered, voice muffled. I missed you every second, I said, holding him tighter. We stayed there, father and son, in the middle of that gymnasium, while the world blurred around us. It did not matter that I had been humiliated. It did not matter that I had cried in courtrooms or spoken to millions. It did not matter that laws had passed or that apologies had been made. What mattered was this hug, this boy, this second. Later, they asked me to speak. I walked up to the microphone, my son still holding my hand. I looked out at the crowded parents who had served, kids who would grow up in a country slowly trying to do better. I came home a few months ago. I began, but the truth is, I did not feel home until today. I looked down at Elijah. This little man right here, he saved me, not with medals, not with laws, but with hope. I turned back to the audience. If we want a better country, it wants to start with headlines or hearings. It starts with how we teach our children, what we show them, what we become for them. I paused, then added, I was once made to kneel in an airport because someone saw my skin before they saw my service. But today, I kneel for this for my son, and I rise with him. I lifted Elijah in my arms. The gym exploded in applause, but I did not cry until that night. When we were alone at home, he brought me a shoebox. Inside were photos, letters, drawings he would made while I was deployed. I kept them safe. He said, so you would know I never forgot you. I pulled him onto the couch, wrapped him in a blanket, and whispered, I will never leave you again. He yawned, leaned against me. Promise. I swear. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. The world felt still, whole. For the first time in a long time, I was not Sergeant Hall. I was not a symbol. I was Daddy. And that was enough. That was everything. The battlefield taught me how to survive. But it was coming home that taught me how to live. I left for war believing my uniform would protect me. I returned to find it could not even protect me from my own country's fear. They saw a threat before they saw a soldier. They made me kneel, strip, and explain my worth all while wearing the very fabric that represents freedom. But I rose, not because I was stronger than the pain, but because I was seen. By Linda, who recorded the truth. By my son, who believed I was a hero even when I felt like a ghost. By the millions who chose to listen, instead of look away. Through it all, I learned this. The fight does not end when the war does. It continues in our schools, our streets, our systems wherever injustice wears a smile and a badge. We must protect dignity with the same conviction we protect borders. We must salute not just service, but humanity. And when we see wrong, we must stand even when it is easier to scroll past. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of what is possible when truth is louder than silence, do not let it end here. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories that matter. Leave a comment to honor someone you know who is served and been forgotten. Share this video not for views, but for justice. Let us make sure the next soldier who comes home is welcomed with respect, not stripped of it. Because dignity is not a privilege, it is a right, and it is time we defend it together.